Yeah. So, let's go with the flow. 7-7. There's a lot of intuition going on there, but also to being willing to go with new beginnings and having a structure within that new beginning, right? Right? That's kind of where I'm trying to go with all this. Um, this is Tenebris Gate, and yeah, so we miss 10 for now. So, something that I think is really important is to focus on. So, I had this like moment, this revelation for myself, but also to just in general. Like, I think I grew up where, people focus on what I was doing wrong. And I've had the experience, work wise, very fortunately, to have people focus on what I'm doing well. And that's a novel experience. For anyone who's experienced that, at first it's like culture shock, and it takes you a while to get used to it. And I am going to be honest with you. I have ADHD, and I used to be an RBT, and I do token boards and things like that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to use token boards on myself and see if it actually works for me. And I've been doing token boards for myself, and it's worked really nicely, actually, believe it or not. I do an adult version of token boards where I have to earn more. And then I have this smaller token board and then a bigger token board. So when I earn the small tokens, they go into big token board. So I need a lot of tokens to get specific things. But it still worked out really well for me because I'm doing things that I would normally not be motivated to do, because ADHD people have we're just externally motivated, man. But also too, I think I had this realization that I need to be focusing on what I'm doing well at. And I have been struggling for a while knowing what my purpose in life is for a very long time. I worked in the mental health field, so I was like, well, yeah, that's my purpose. And for a while I played with the idea, well, maybe I'm a tarot reader, or maybe I'm going to be a doula, or maybe I'm this and this and that and this and that. And I would give 110% for these births in my life with things I thought were my purpose. And I've come to terms with the fact that I may never know what my purpose is. And it made me recall when I was younger, reading a study about how it's actually not really helpful to get kids to think at a young age about what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. It actually has a very negative impact on them. I don't remember what the research study is or anything, by the way, so don't like quote me or whatever, or I'm not an LMC doctor, financial, legal advisor, blah blah blah. Like, all choices are your own. You got to make the best choices with what you know yourself. Like, you have this beautiful thing called free will, right? And I have this beautiful thing called free will, right? And so I kind of realized that I've been relying on the fact that at a young age I felt this high pressure to understand who I was. And in that desperation of understanding who I was, I've been fucking myself up the yin yang, because I thought, you know what, eventually I'll figure it out and I will know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I was, thinking to myself, like, well, maybe, is it possible that I can want to do many, many things? Yeah, it's actually quite possible you can want to do many, many things. You can want to be connected to your spirituality and do videos every now and then. Like, you can enjoy that hobby. You can totally do that. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to write, well, if you feel inspired to write, go ahead, write. And I thought, well, what if I want to be a yoga instructor? What if I want to do yoga? Well, if you feel inspired, go do it. But then I'm like, but what is my purpose? And I asked myself, like, I said to myself, why do you feel the need to put a purpose behind any of that. And this little kid version of me came out, but well, aren't I supposed to know what I need to know for the rest of my life? And I'm like thinking to myself, like, honey, 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 honey. No, 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 no. You're just gonna drive yourself insane if you keep doing that. No, 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 no. You need to let go of control, babe. You need to let go of control with yourself and the world, and why don't you just let loose and just enjoy life? And this type A person in me wants, that is also ADHD, is like, well, what if we just do short bursts, figure it out as we go? No, 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 no. No, take a deep breath. Okay. What do you feel every single time you are trying to force yourself to have a life purpose? I'm feeling very anxious. I feel like I'm about to freak out, have a meltdown. I feel like there's something wrong with me. All right, so is it possible it's okay to just let go of the need to have a life purpose? No, but I need to make money. I need to come into my own, into my power. I want. And the person that worked in mental health field ages a long time ago, that almost successfully got her LMHC degree but dropped out, is like, so tell me how it feels every single time you pick up a purpose and put it down and then pick up another purpose. I feel shittier every single time I do that. And then I hear other people talk about, well, it seems like it's the wheel, right? Seems like you right back at where you started again. And that makes me feel worse. Okay, well, it sounds like you have a lot of different interests. And it sounds like this pressure that you are putting on yourself to know everything and be everything and become everything all at once is kind of driving you crazy. Yeah, no, it really is, and I hate it a lot, and I just wish I could just allow myself to let loose, be who I want to be in the present moment, and if I could have it my way, I wouldn't have a purpose at all. Really? Like, if you had your way, you wouldn't have a purpose at all? Yeah, like, I just take it easy, relax, trust the universe, all that stuff. So why won't you do that now? Well, because isn't that not how it works? Says who? Like, how do you know it doesn't work that way? Like, what makes you think that you need to have a purpose? What if your purpose was just to have many, many purposes? What if your purpose in life was to be kind and thoughtful? What if your purpose would be present in the present moment? What if your purpose was not to have a purpose at all? What if you're one of those rare souls where you're just supposed to enjoy life, Like, how do you know what your purpose is supposed to be? Have you talked to the divine source recently? I looked at my face and I saw my sister a little bit in the eyes, and I was like, I had to take a moment. What if your purpose was just be you? And I think that makes us very, very uncomfortable because we were raised with these expectations. Some of us, not all of us, but some of us were raised with expectations that we had to meet certain standards and goals, that we had to understand everything, that we had to mask, and we had to behave, and I grew up in a time period where good grades were important. You had to go to the right school. You had to get a real job. What's a real job? I don't even believe that real jobs exist anymore, because if a real job includes going to school, then a real job should pay all your bills. And very often when people go to pay $100,000 to $200,000, $300,000 total for a degree that doesn't actually pay their bills. That's not a real job as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. Like a real, that, like, no, like that's not a real job. So think about it. Like, if you are raised with such rigid expectations that being open to new ideas is quite frightening, then I think it's time to reevaluate the whole, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? Just myself. I mean, honestly, when I was growing up, I think if I had said something like that, that would have been like, but you're weird. No, my parents would have said that, but I think I grew up in a period, in high school, around a lot of different people, where I was seen as the weird girl. Like, I was weird. I had a hard time belonging. I don't even know how to describe how weird I was. I was in a time period where being a pagan was kind of like very taboo, and I would gravitate to whatever books I could locate, and it was very difficult to locate them back then. It was before, like, that. It was when internet was very limited, and it was dial-up. And so I'm dating myself, but it's very true. Like, we had limited mentors in the book world, and so we hadn't yet fully had the full on exposure to all kinds of different belief systems, and paganism hadn't yet kind of gotten, like, branching out yet. It hadn't fully branched out in the way it branched out now. And so, paganism was that weird person rebel thing you did, that you weren't trying to be a rebel, but having a pagan name, wearing a pentacle, wearing black, not being willing to smile for the masses, which was me. People were like, are you depressed? Are you suicidal? And I'm like, no, it's just my resting face. What's your problem? And I remember also too being very studious and smart and intelligent, and also too very, like, telling people how it was, and realizing that that's not something you did, and kind of realizing that I needed to belong, which I hated. I hated people, and I loved people at the same time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I get along better with teachers versus my peers. I feel like I get along better with adults. I understand adults better than my peers. And I remember thinking how surreal that was. I remember, like, also too wanting to rebel, but being very about rules. I remember thinking, how also too how boys found me very intimidating. And I remember feeling like I'm very, like, unusual. I also too people are very uncomfortable. They don't relate to me. I'm very hard to connect with, and it's not because I wasn't trying to connect with people, but it was more like I wasn't going to put a ton of effort in people that I felt like were going to be a waste of energy, if that makes sense. I think at that time period, I felt like, my spirituality was more important, and if people were going to be disrespectful to me, I didn't see a good reason to be respectful to them in turn. But at the same time, I wanted to belong. So I was also too, at the same time, trying to conform a little bit and trying to kind of mask. But I didn't know how to mask back then. So it was this weird hot mess of a situation. And then it became cool to be pagan. Like, it's like, that was weird. That was surreal to me. I'm like going like, it's cool to be pagan, like, okay, no problem. No, that's totally fine. I get it. It's totally fine. It's good. That's good. It's good. It should be cool to be pagan. My childhood, though. I'm sure in some parts of the world it's not cool. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's somewhere. It's always somewhere. It's never cool, um, but yeah, and then so I remember wishing that my purpose could just be being my weird witchy self. I wish that I could just be a philosopher, like a pagan philosopher. I remember thinking like, oh, I wish I could just be a spiritualist person. Like, why can't I just talk about my knowledge and let that be my purpose? You know? Or like, I'm like, wouldn't that be cool, man? Like, wouldn't that be cool? And now there's so many of us who do that, and I'm thinking to myself like, there's so many of us, so many of us. It's true though. There's so many of us now. We have our story to share. And that's a good thing. And at the same time, that's very intimidating. That's incredibly intimidating. So I feel like there's a lot of us trying to like, well, I need to create a facade. I need to create an image. I need to present myself in a way that's unique and interesting, that will catch people's eye. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, as someone who felt that high pressure to like, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to impress anyone. And I remember at a young age, like, so I kind of feel like I wish I could be a little bit of like that teenage version of me who didn't care about what people thought about her. You know, like, I'm like, I wish I could embody that just a little bit, because I feel like, you know, you're going to be just fine if you're just yourself for the most part, mostly, you know, as long as you're nice about it. I wasn't nice as a high schooler though. I feel like I was mean, but I'm nicer now, so that's good. But you know what I mean? Like, you know, I feel like, you know, we often think we have to be something, we have to become something. And I think that pressure has caused unnecessary pain and suffering in a lot of us. Give me a minute. I had to get myself my drink. Water. Yeah. I think if I could give any advice to younger witches, pagans, spiritualists, Buddhists, whatever you want to be, go ahead and be that, right? I would just try really hard once a day to forget that there's pressure to have a purpose as best as you can. I mean, I've spent like a long time wanting a purpose, you know, to have. Remember when I was young, in my 20s, people say keep your eyes on the prize, right? And I think for the most part, yeah, that's mostly good advice. But for someone like myself, I think that was bad advice, because I always had this illusion that you're supposed to have this end goal and you're supposed to move towards that end goal. You need to know what the end goal is, have plan, you know, have a series of steps towards it, work towards that goal, right? And everything will be magically okay, right? It doesn't allow for flexibility to pivot when you need to. And I've found the most success in my life I've received is knowing when to be flexible so I can pivot, you know, because when I was in the mental health field, I had a really bad head concussion, and I had a couple of series of other issues that happened in my life where pivoting actually saved my butt. You know, being willing to let go of the mental health field work and go into something different allowed me to be more successful in the long run. Like, I'm not saying like, you know, like I'm saying like I'm content I'm content. Of course I want more, but I'm content. And having the ability to pivot, that's important. It's essential, especially in this world that's going to try to convince you that things have to happen in a certain way. Like you have to live in this box. I had this weird wacky doodle dream like 2-3 weeks ago, where I dreamed I was surrounded by water, like in a circle, and I saw someone try to leave this circle island, and there were all these bugs and things like that and the water became suddenly, it went from clear to very muddied, and the bugs were coming out like big eyeballs, and I was about ready to make a leap across to get away from this island. And when I woke up, I thought, oh, well, maybe I should stay exactly where I am, where it's safe. I was very confused by that dream. There's been plenty of times I've been confused by dreams. And I think that sometimes it is important to know when to be still, because there's a Buddhist thing that they talk about, that sometimes I think when we're too overreactive, we can create muddied waters, which is about the mind, and where it's harder to see and have a clear understanding, to be alert and aware, and to understand things as they truly are. And I could be wrong about how I'm, but there are times, though, that timing is everything. But there are also 2 times where letting our fear preventing us to take this leap of faith of getting out of a situation is going to actually cause us more harm than good. So having also discernment is so important too. I do want to wrap up this episode because we're getting to the point where we're getting to that 30-minute mark. It's really important for me to know when to wrap up, because I love talking a lot, which is so hilarious, because I also too, when I was younger, I hated talking to people. It's so ironic. It's so ironic. I don't get it either. Yeah, so those are my 2 main advice for you, is knowing when to be flexible, to know when to pivot, but also to develop discernment over your current situation, because sometimes being still is important. Staying where you're at or knowing when to act is important, but sometimes allowing your fear to hold you back is a big game ender. It's what muddies the water. Period. But yeah, I hope you liked my episode about, life purposes and things like that. I think that we do have to ask ourselves questions on a regular basis about this sort of stuff. But remember, I'm not an LMC or doctor, financial legal advisor. All choices are your own. You have to make these choices for yourself. I'm more of a philosopher. I'm more of a kind of person. I like to ask myself these questions, whether I like it or not. So I ask you questions that I've asked myself. Excuse me. I hope you enjoyed this episode.